I kind of almost can picture what 1,000 people looks like standing outside a big park or something like that. What about 50,000? What does 50,000 look like? Can you even get your brain around that?
Barely. Big rock concert that I wouldn't go to because I like to go to smaller clubs.
Because it's too many people.
Yeah.
What does it take to become a successful writer or artist? There are some destructive myths out there about what a creative career is supposed to look like. And we're kept in our lane by the undermining belief that, as artists, we're somehow incapable of building autonomous, sustainable careers if we choose the work that's closest to our hearts. So we're going to tear down those myths and get the truth by going to the source. Incredible professional creatives who followed every path but the expected one to success on their own terms. I'm cartoonist, author, and coach for creatives, Jessica Abel, and this is The Autonomous Creative. Hi there, and welcome. I've invited Matt Madden to join me again as co-host to talk about a huge problem for creatives who are trying to make a decent living with their work. But nothing they do seems to get them to a point of stability and security. And of course, there is so much to do. Social media tech giants and marketers with tactics and apps to sell all constantly scream at us that all we need to do is use their thing every day, constantly, and the implication is that success will follow. That triggers a toxic self-blame cycle where you think if you only could possibly do all the things that marketers tell you should do, like posting constantly on social media, sending out email newsletters, starting a YouTube channel, blogging, all the things, that you could make your creative business successful. But you can't do it all. There are literally not enough hours, even if you could plan and produce all that content. So you blame yourself for your business flatlining. It leads to a cycle of hopelessness and self-loathing and tons of anxiety. But if you're listening, and this is the case for you, you've got to know that it's not your fault. There are hidden assumptions baked into the idea that if you just did enough mass marketing stuff, you'd make a living that reveal why it's just so hard and possibly flat out wrong for indie creators. We're going to talk about what's lurking beneath and how knowing that can lead to healthier, happier decisions. Hi, Matt. Welcome back.
Hey, Jessica.
So I wrote an article last week where I broke down the missing math in the 1,000 True Fans model, which comes from this famous blog post by Kevin Kelly.
That's that thing where if you got a certain number of dedicated fans who are going to pay you money every year or month or whatever, you're going to make a happy living.
Yeah, the basic idea is that an independent creator who can find 1,000 true fans who will pay the creator $100 per year for whatever it is that the creator is doing can make a really solid living, which, on the face of it, that's true, right? 100 times 1,000 equals 100,000.
Right. I first heard about that from, I think, Chris Rock talking about it, the stand-up comedian. And in that kind of model of like, oh, you do stand-up comedy, you're going to clubs and you're charging, whatever, 75, $100 a ticket. And, that seemed like a scale of economy that I could imagine that working.
Right. I'm sure it works for Chris Rock.
Right. Exactly. When I try and picture that with, mini comics or even, published graphic novels, it sounds a bit harder to pull off.
Right. Like somebody who publishes comics like you do, like last year you put out a short book called Bridge, which was something you worked on multiple times over 10 years or something. Didn't take 10 years to do, but it was sort of like
but it was
iterative.
a long developing project.
And you published your beautiful big graphic novel Ex Libris, which took you many years of sort of developmental thinking and then probably 3 years of solid work on it, correct?
Oh yeah.
And so if your true fans were to buy both of those books, and they are buying both of those books, you do have true fans and they're buying both books, your profit on those two books might come to
$2.
No, it's more than
a lot more than that. But the retail total for both those things would be $29.95 plus $7. So, as they say, you do the math. I mean, the take I get of that, whatever, is 7 or 8% in the case of Ex Libris.
Let's be generous and say you make $3 or $4 off of those books, collectively or something like that. So you need a lot more than 1,000 true fans to make $100,000. Just, you have to multiply it out.
Especially if it takes me 5 years to put a book out.
Right, exactly. So like you can't, in terms of somebody who's trying to be an author and produce books, even producing $100 worth of stuff that somebody could buy in a year is really hard. One of the things that Kelly sort of added later on to his post as a condition is you can't have a publisher. You have to self-publish for this to work, for the 1,000 to work, because you need to be making all the money
All the money, yeah.
and not, having a large chunk being taken by an agent or publisher or whatever. There are a lot of little caveats there, a lot of, details. But let's just say, aside from this problem of how do you produce that much stuff, which is a problem even for me, that I sell courses that are more expensive. They're more than $100. They range from between like 400, or I have something that's like 150 up to like about $800. But I don't put out new ones basically ever,
Right.
like I put out one new course last year. I don't intend to do another course. I don't foresee another one. So it's not like there's this constant flow of new stuff. So that's one issue that can come up for people. Either they can't put out enough, the price point is too low, or they just have no intention of continuing to produce new stuff constantly. So that's one
Hmm.
issue. Let's put that aside though and say you could somehow have $100 worth of stuff to sell to 1,000 people. This is where the stuff that we just talked about is the obvious surface level stuff that anybody who's selling stuff could think about. It's like very, very obvious. But the hidden part is different from that, because the hidden part is this idea of conversion.
This is a word that is pretty new to me, and I only recently am starting to get a sense of what it means. So please explain for us lay people out here.
Okay, so the idea of conversion is this. Conversion is any time you have a number of people who you ask to do something, and then some percentage of them do that thing. So in my blog post, I think I used the example of like a group of friends you ask to go to brunch, and you have 10 friends on like a text,
Hmm.
chain, and you say, let's all go to brunch, and 4 of them say yes. That is a conversion of 40%, right? 4 out of 10 said yes to going to brunch.
Right.
And so you're trying to figure out basically how effective is my asking for something by
Right.
using conversion rates.
Right.
And
Because the
so,
point is that smaller number of people that actually convert to actually doing something. Right.
well, the point is that your conversion is almost never 100%. When you're asking people to buy stuff or to take actions that involve their time and energy and money, it's almost never 100%. It's often very, very far from 100%. And
Yeah.
so the point is not so much the number of people who do the thing. The point I want to get at is that the number of people who you have to ask, right? So that's a multiplier on the number of yeses you need. So if you need 1,000 yeses, right? If you need 1,000 yeses,
If you want to invite 1,000 people to brunch with you, how many people you need to invite?
exactly. Yeah, well, so the 1,000 true fans who need to be spending this $100, how many people do you need to ask in order to get 1,000 yeses? That is the question that we're trying to get at here. That's the conversion rate. And conversion rates can be all over the map. Things vary based on the group of people you're asking. Are they people who all know you already? Are you asking total strangers? Like, there's all different kinds of elements that go into it. And so there's no one conversion rate that is a good conversion rate. I was just listening to a podcast the other day about this because that's how I roll. And they were talking about how the only good conversion rate is one that's better than the last time you did it. But if you've never
Hmm.
done it or never figured it out, you don't know what that is. So just for the sake of round numbers, typically conversion rates of like 0.01 to 2% are considered solid conversion rates for sales.
Yeah, that was
So,
a surprising thing for me. I first became aware of that concept through my mailing list, and I don't have a big mailing list. I have like 1,000 people or something, and I would send out a mailing, and I get a conversion. In this case, not of sales, but just of people reading my mail. Like
mhm.
opening it and clicking on stuff, and it would be a conversion of like 3 or 4%, and I would show it to you, and I was like, I was really dejected about it. That seems really low, but apparently that's actually a pretty decent number. I mean, I'm making up that number. I don't actually remember what it was, but
Right. To be clear, there's a number people talk about a lot, which is open rates. And that's the open rate is what you're talking about of
mhm.
people, the number of people who open an email out of the number of people you send it to. And it's not going to be 100% either. A smaller list that's pretty passionate, you have a lot of true fans. The people on your list care about your work. And the smaller your list is, the more likely that's the case. If you have a really big list, it's likely that your rates are lower because there are a lot of sort of people who've been there for a while or just kind of hanging out and don't care. But for
Yeah.
your list, I think your open rate is probably pretty high. It's probably 50% plus. But your click rate, which is it's a type of conversion. We don't usually say conversion about it because people aren't necessarily taking the final action of signing up for something or whatever.
Right.
But if you have a button for clicking, it's probably, you know, 3 to 5%, six,
Hmm.
8% maybe,
Yeah. Or less sometimes.
or less sometimes. Depends on what you're asking. That's
Yeah.
exactly the point.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly the point. So if you're paying attention to what you ask people do and how you ask them to do it in your buttons or whatever your links, you say something that makes people think, oh, I want to click this. Pay attention when you do that, when you get those higher rates, because that's something that you want to use again, right?
Hmm.
That's
Build
the
on, right.
purpose of understanding these numbers, is so you can do what works again and build on what works, and don't do the things that don't work.
Right.
Okay, so let's get back to sales conversion, because that's a different number. And as I said, the sort of industry standard that's thrown around is anywhere from like 0.01% and that's like something like a giant e-commerce company that's just asking people to buy stuff from an email. They might get a very low conversion rate, but it's enough because there's a zillion of them, up to maybe two. If you're really engaged list, people who really care, maybe you get 3%. But let's look at that 1,000 again. If you want to sell 1,000 people something, and you need to get those 1,000 people to say yes, that means 50,000 offers if you are converting at 2%. I mean, you go from 1,000, you're like, 1,000, yeah, I can understand 1,000. I mean, I kind of almost can picture what 1,000 people looks like standing outside a big park or something like that. What about 50,000? What does 50,000 look like? Can you even get your brain around that?
Barely. Big rock concert that I wouldn't go to because I like to go to smaller clubs.
Because it's too many people.
Yeah. Too many people.
And okay, so let's take that number and go like, oh, 50,000. That is a lot. That's intimidating. Maybe it doesn't
Hey,
have to be
wait,
quite that high.
just to clarify, you're saying you need to reach 50,000 people just to have a chance of getting 1,000 of them to buy whatever it is that you're trying to sell for $100, right?
Right. Or you're selling multiple times throughout the year. It doesn't have to be necessarily one $100 thing, but just for the sake of simplicity, we're saying we're trying to sell a $100 thing to 1,000 people. Yes, you need to offer this $100 thing to 50,000 people, basically. So, my email list hovers around like 6,000. I don't have 50,000 people to offer to, right?
Hmm.
And I don't get 1,000 sales when I offer stuff. That just doesn't happen. So that already sort of blows this 1,000 fans model out of,
Complicates it at least.
makes it complicated, right? So let's go one step further, though. So those 50,000 people that you are offering to, that you're putting your offer in front of, they have to already be there knowing who you are in some sense, even if they're not your true fans yet. They have to kind of know who you are at least.
Hmm.
uh, Probably be on your email list, or at least in some kind of framework in which you can make this offer.
Part of the scene, like they're comics readers or they're stand-up comedy fans or
No,
something.
no, no. They
No?
need to know you. They need to know you
Okay.
already. So they need to be like on some platform, say, where you have access to this group of people. So those 50,000 people that we're trying to offer to, they need to already know who you are. They need to already be in your system somehow. But you have to get them there somehow, right? They have to have gotten to
Hmm.
that point somehow. And I'm gonna throw out another general rule of thumb kind of number here that I see frequently. I don't know how reliable it is, but it's certainly something like this, right? How many individual people need to see your stuff multiple times for them to decide to become part of your audience that you can offer to?
What do you mean? Like I show them the cover of my book 10 times before they actually notice it and click on a link or something?
Yeah, like they hear you on a podcast and somebody shares a post, or they see something like come through their social media feed but they're not subscribed to you, or like they have followed you on social media, but they're not really paying attention. They're like a YouTube subscriber, and they see your stuff show up every once in a while.
Hmm.
Marketers say, and again, I don't know where this number comes from, but it's something like this. that people need to encounter your material in a substantial way, not just like skimming by, but like actually looking at it and then, letting it go 7 to 20 times
Hmm.
before they kind of know who you are, like before they actually
Yeah. It's
understand where you fit in their world and then make a decision to either opt into your audience or not.
It
Right?
sounds a bit related to that thing we tell our kids that when they try new foods, they have to taste it, 7 to 10 times, and eventually they'll learn to like it. We're trying to like getting people to taste us over a number of times,
That
and hoping
is
that they will get a taste for us.
that is exactly right. I've never thought of that before. And that is perfect because that's exactly right. It's like sometimes they try something the first time and they're like, this is amazing. I love it. I'm into it. But most of the time, even stuff that they're like they're crazy for avocado, for example. I couldn't get them to eat avocado for the first like year I was trying. They
Hmm.
just wouldn't do it. And now we can't keep enough in the house.
Yeah. So we are avocado.
You're an avocado. But also there are times when the first time you see something, you're like, oh my God, this is for me. And you deep dive and, I think you have to average this over, numbers of people. So here's the other thing. In order to have the 50,000 people to offer to in your audience, people have to decide to be in your audience. They have to decide to be paying attention enough to be offered to. So you know what it's like when you see a social media post and somebody's trying to sell something to you and you have no idea like who they are or what they're doing. They just
Sure.
like say, hey, buy this thing. And we all as creators, or most of us as creators, are just like, I don't want to do that. Ew, icky, icky. And of course you don't want to do that because the people that you're putting it in front of have not actively opted into your like offer zone, whatever that is, your
Yeah.
email list or some kind of place where it's like you've said that you want to hear from this person in that kind of way. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong, by the way, nothing wrong with telling people that your stuff is for sale and asking people to buy stuff. Please don't misinterpret this as saying that. But being pushy about sales with people who have not opted in doesn't work very well. Basically, people have to opt into your kind of your world to a certain extent. And not everybody who encounters your stuff is going to opt into your world. Like people who, see Ex Libris in the front window of Shakespeare and Company bookstore, a lot of them are just going to glaze over and not pay attention. And some people are going to be like, oh, that looks interesting. Or like they see the staff pick card or whatever. And they're like,
Hmm.
most people don't pay any attention. Some people are going to pick it up and read the card and pay attention to what's in it. And then some of those people are then going to buy the book, right?
Right.
So that first outer group, again, totally rough number, totally doesn't, necessarily correspond to your particular reality, depending on how these things are happening in reality. But it's something like 10%, maybe, if you're lucky, of
Hmm.
the people who encounter your work are going to say, yeah, I want to hear more about this. It might be less, it might be more, but let's just say 10%. So if it's 10% of the people who encounter your work, and marketers say that you need to actually encounter it a number of times before you're awake to it enough to say yes
Hmm.
to hearing more about it. But of those people, like if you say it's 10% of people who encounter your work who say, yes, I want to hear more about it, then we're talking about putting it in front of 5 million people,
That is a very daunting number.
right? Isn't it crazy?
But it makes sense though because it takes so long. Like even as someone who's always trying to learn about new comics and writers and new music and movies, I actively am looking for stuff, but I regularly will encounter a name or just see an image of a book cover or hear a snippet of music and kind of like follow away like, oh, that sounds kind of interesting. Maybe I'll look into that next time it comes up. And I've experienced that as from the reader side, where like it really takes quite a few times for something to really jog my attention enough to be like, all right, now I'm going to actually look this person up, follow them on social media or check out a video on YouTube or whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly. And again, like, another caveat about this is like, for example, with your book, you've had well more than 1,000 sales at this point, and it's not, has it been in front of 5 million people plus? No, probably hasn't. But you already have people who are in your audience who are you've sold to before, so like that's a warmer audience,
Hmm.
and so the conversion rates are totally different there. And also your publisher Uncivilized Books has fans of what they do who are going to buy your book even if they don't know you. there's a lot of other things going on there. So
Sure.
I just want to make sure that people don't understand that I'm literally saying every single author has to have 5 million people, in order to just sell 1,000 books. Like it's not one to one. The point is orders of magnitude. So the point I'm trying to make is not so much the specific numbers, but that we're talking about orders of magnitude bigger than 1,000.
Of people that need to see or encounter your work before they'll pay attention to it, much less buy it, right?
Right, it's exponential. Like the conversion rate from people who you're offering to sales is X, and the conversion rate from people who, see your work somewhere and then sort of enter your audience is Y. That's an exponential equation, no matter what your conversions rates are. Like the numbers of people who need to see stuff and be exposed to your work is so high compared to what we think about in terms of what we need in order to make the work pay for itself, essentially.
Right. So, like a lot of creative people, I've got my mailing list. I'm on social media. I try and get on podcasts, and I do events to promote my books when they come out. And it really starts to seem like a flog for very little return. I just feel like I'm banging my head and burning the candle at both ends after a while, trying to get people to pay attention to my work.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we were literally talking about this at lunch where you're like, I have this list, I have this, and I need to do all of the things, and they're all equal priority, and I don't know how to choose, right? Because it's
Yeah.
all the different things that I need to do. We're all on the debunking train here. So I'm going to debunk a little more. The impression that you get from like tech giants is that if you just post every day, then you're going to make a middle class living somehow. Like there's, those things are somehow going to like come together and work. And it's just not true. Even if you get really good at posting so that people are engaging, the volume you need to sell in order to make a living from something that is a low cost, low profit thing like a book is insane, right?
So, what is social media good for then? What should I be doing with it?
I mean, social media is a great tool, and really, like, when you think back 10, 15 years ago, not having this, it's amazing that we have access to this. We actually can be in touch with all of these people around the world. None of what I'm gonna say means that you can't use it and have some effectiveness. It's just not 1 + 1 = 2, like, it's not that simple. I read a really interesting article by Regina Anagino. She wrote an article called "Social Media Equals Sharecropping?" That clarified a key insight for me, and we'll definitely link to this in the show notes. What she said, what she pointed out is that it just doesn't serve social media platforms to help you build a business on their platform. They want to keep you poor and posting, like continuously, desperately posting, looking for attention, because that is actually their business model. You are both the producer of anything valuable that they do, anything on the platform that's valuable, it's because people are posting, right?
Mhm.
And you are also the product that they sell in the form of your data and your attention. So they need you there doing all this stuff, like churning out material in order to bring in attention, because that's all that's good about social media is it's the social part, the people.
Right.
And so they can sell more attention, right?
Hmm.
So you can buy ads, but these social media companies will never create an ecosystem that's actually built to help you organically make sales
Yeah.
and take people off the platform because it just doesn't serve them.
And I get that sharecropping analogy because there is a sense of like almost like indentured servitude to the social media once you get a bit of success. I see that a lot, just like YouTube videos that I watch where you'll see someone who gets popular and then almost invariably within a year or so there's a post where like, guys, I'm really burnt out, I need to take a break, I just can't keep up the pace of like this sort of demand of feeding the machine, even if you
Hmm.
are making a living from it, it's just really grueling.
Totally.
There doesn't seem to
And
be an off ramp from it. It's like designed to keep you going.
well, I think what's important to understand about social media is that unless you want to commit yourself to mass marketing. And what I mean is like becoming an Instagrammer, like an Instagram influencer, becoming a YouTuber. And like that is how you're going to build your audience. And you can build an audience of millions that way. That is an option for people, but it means a full-time job, right? Unless you want to do that, you're not going to win the algorithm because the algorithm is designed to keep you in there producing stuff, keep you poor, basically. They love people who are Instagrammers who are Instagram influencers producing all this stuff and bringing people in and all, so they're going to help you to a certain extent if that is your goal. But if you're just going to come in and post some little stuff, it's not going to break through algorithmically, except, every once in a while, just totally randomly. So instead, you have to treat it as a relationship building tool. And I think that it actually is quite effective at. So like, making friendships and having conversations and all that kind of stuff, which is fabulous if you don't need 5 million people to be paying attention to your stuff, but like 500 or even 5,000, like then you can actually use it effectively within that mode. You don't have to show up all the time. You don't have to be posting like a machine because you're not trying to use Instagram the way Instagram tells you you should be using Instagram or
Hmm.
replace your platform here. Basically, all the platforms have, they're different, but they all use this basic model.
Right.
And the thing is, it's like we are not Random House, right? We're as indie creators, you're not even publishing your own work, but you could, and even either way, it doesn't, Uncivilized Books isn't Random House either. They also have low profit margins on their individual products. Their individual products are inexpensive, right? They're selling
Right.
books, they're selling, ebooks or, audiobooks or whatever, but they have huge volume, huge volume. And because they have such big volume, they can have a large, luxurious office building on Broadway full of employees who are paid salaries and benefits. Not high salaries, maybe, but they have salaries, right? They have
Hmm.
entire departments devoted to advertising and marketing and publicity. It's really hilarious, actually. As I was getting ready to record this, I got the Random House newsletter for authors with 5 social media tips for authors. They want you, when you're published by a conventional publisher, they want you to have a platform and to be really good at social media, but nobody's talking about how much of a job it is. It's really crazy.
Yeah, we've definitely experienced that.
Yeah. But I think that the thing is that we as self-publishers, small publishers, when you go look for tips for social media for authors or whatever, they're all framed as if you have the resources of Random House to get this done.
Hmm.
And we just don't. This kind of advice, like just post every day on Instagram and have a YouTube channel full of entertaining and professional videos and write a blog and promote your blog. This is literally a full-time job. This is the full-time job of that department full of marketers at Penguin Random House
Yeah, who are getting a salary for it.
who are
Even.
getting a salary for it and don't have to do anything else. Like
Yeah.
that is what they do. Yeah. So it's just I think that it's a comparison trap, right? Where we talk about the comparison trap all the time with other artists where we look at somebody who seems to be on the outside, seems to be really successful, and comparing ourselves, what we know about what's not working for us to what we see working for somebody else, which is usually wrong.
Hmm.
And that's, of course, what we do usually on this podcast is get behind that picture and find out what's going on. That's one kind of comparison trap. This is a different kind where we're comparing ourselves to a multinational corporation and their approach to marketing. And all of the stuff we're being told about marketing basically is for that scale.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean to do that level of promotion for your own stuff more than like I've been doing that basically with Ex Libris, which came out in November, trying to post about the book regularly and share images of it and trying to keep it creative and not just feel like you're flogging people with. But I had to stop at one point just because I could only have so many images of my own book cover. I felt like in my feed, it was starting to overwhelm it. I had to like kind of step back and take a break. And I've been on like a almost going on 2 month social media break. I'm getting ready to get back on there, which is like goes against those sort of rule. Like you're supposed to be out there flogging all the time, but
Well, that's the algorithm. That's the
right.
thing, is like, you're trying to master the algorithm, that consistency is really, really important. But if you're using it as a relationship tool, it still counts, but it's not the same.
Yeah, I just want new people to discover my book, and I guess in that sense, I'm hoping for the algorithm to help out. So it's kind of an unresolved problem there, I guess. Like I don't want to just be sharing images to my same group of fans and friends and family that already know my stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that is an ongoing problem with social media. Social media is both ephemeral and it's limited. It doesn't even show your content to all the people who follow you, much less people who don't follow you.
Right.
So I think that is another big misconception about social media for most people, which is that It's going to grow your audience, which it does not naturally do.
Yeah.
Again, the job of the algorithm is to keep people on the platform and keep them scrolling. It's not to help you build your business.
Right. I mean, is there another way to build a business if that's what you're trying to make a living from your art? Because I definitely feel that like the social media, I feel like I am doing effective work there, but mainly reaching readers that already know my work. You know, I'm doing less of like finding new people. So what's the answer there?
Again, so it is a relationship tool. And so you're using it as a relationship tool. And I think that's
Yeah.
great. Yes, do that. But in terms of the original question of this exponential math of the 1,000 true fans model, to get back to that, that that's the core problem, right? So it's like, it's easy when you have something that you're offering already. Like you have this book, you're focused on the book, you want to sell the book, to get into a cycle where you're just looking at the tactics for that book. But the bigger picture is the 1,000 true fans model isn't about selling a book. It's about making a living. It's about
Right.
having a sustainable career. And the answer to that, there are a couple different ways to address that discrepancy that's built into that model. One is, as I said, this thing of taking the path of really mastering mass marketing. So mastering YouTube, Twitch, Instagram at the influencer level. This is a full-time job. I mean, it's something that you would have to commit yourself to, but it can work if you do it right. I mean, a lot of people, um, let me just say, there are people who make this work
Yeah.
and there's other, revenue streams that come with that, like advertising, whatever. But it's a whole kind of being a creator that really is much more about, yeah, mass marketing, video, that kind of thing, than it is about being an author, cartoonist, whatever, where you need a lot of time in your studio to make the thing you're trying to make. So that's one option, right? It is an option. And I don't want to, anybody who's sort of like, yeah, I'm down, then there are teachers who teach about that. And I think that getting serious about it is the way to go. You go, that's what I'm doing. But if you think about that and you just think, oh my God, no.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very all absorbing, the people, like I said, the people I follow that appear to be successful. I imagine them being very stressed out behind the scenes. And it's basically all they do. Like if you're, again, in my example, a cartoonist, and I want to have like a YouTube channel or something where I talk about comics, it's probably going to take all my time away from actually drawing. Certainly the way I tend to do things, which is to draw very slowly. So it doesn't really, it's like a non-starter for me, and I think for a lot of people to think about being a sort of full-time social media presence in a way that actually would like make money.
Yeah. And I think not just because of the time involved, but also because most people I know don't want to do that. They
Yeah,
don't want to be a video creator or an Instagrammer or whatever. Like they're just not into it.
yeah,
Um, much more likely to encounter people who say they want to get off social media permanently than I want to get on social media all the time. Way more
exactly.
common. So the other major option for creators is to offer things that are more expensive, like a lot more expensive. So instead of making, $5 off a sale, you make $5,000 off a sale. And you can easily see how the exponential math on that one would start to bend in your favor.
Hmm.
And I know that there's a lot of like that immediately raises questions and
Well, for
eh,
me, it's a question of do I start charging $5,000 for my graphic novels? And the answer is no there. So I need to, it tells me I need to come up with a different model there, but maybe we'll get back to that.
well, in the previous episode, we talked about that a
Yeah.
little bit. We talked about like what could that look like for you, and we were talking about the idea of becoming a book coach or a comics coach, where you'd help people finish their books. So it does mean being extremely flexible about your self-conception of what your job will be. There are other options too. You could get a job. A lot of people have a job. That's very, very common to have a job, either part-time or full-time, that allows you to not depend on your creative work.
Hmm.
You could have a partner with a job who's willing to support you. You can invest in real estate. Like there's other things you can do to make money that isn't trying to build a giant audience for your creative work. I had one client actually point out the licensing model, which is where you sell rights to your designs to product companies. Um, sure. I mean, yeah, that's another model. It's a thing you could pursue, but it's an entire
That's a whole other
skill
business
set.
model, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an
Um,
entirely different thing. So if you're into that, sure, go ahead, try it, but that's a whole other thing. So if you're just talking about trying to sell something you can make or do to people, that's basically what we're talking about. Either you have to sell to a lot more people, and that means mastering mass marketing, or you have to sell something that's much more expensive. And that means not selling what you're selling now, but selling something different. Like you have
mhm.
to actually change your mind about what that thing is going to look like.
Like, what are some examples of scaling up to like a different offer? Say you're a podcaster, you do a podcast and you have got a Patreon and it's just not bringing in enough money with and some advertising. What would be like a jump to this next level of a more expensive offer?
You could produce other people's podcasts. You could use your skill set to produce podcasts. You could project manage podcasts. You could become an audio producer and like just do the production part, or you could do, script writing, whatever, depending on what your skills are and what you like to do. It's a great example actually,
And I
because
guess,
there's tons of market for that.
yeah, yeah, and tons of podcasters out there too, struggling to make a living, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And then the other question is, I mean, the related question is like, how do you muster up the gumption to ask for more money for it? Because like I can imagine saying, yeah, I'll help out with your, you know, do the production on your podcast or do mastering your podcasts is another thing that would be good. But like, how do you? I think most people, most artists, especially, I find are inclined to be like, well, just give me $150 and I'll take care of it. So how?
Well, there's that's a complex question, and I hope we'll
Yeah.
be able to get back to that in future episodes. The basic answer, though, I think, is treating your business as a business,
Hmm.
looking at it as a creative business and seeing, like we talked about in the last episode, looking at what your needs are, what your time requirements are, your, for lack of a better word, like cultural requirements, like how do you like to work with people? Do you like to work with groups or individuals? That kind of thing.
Right.
Do you like to do video or not? All the things that about yourself and how you want to work, and using those as a way of developing this offer.
Hmm.
And then setting up the operational side of your business so that clients who come on feel like you know what you're doing.
Right.
You know how to bill them. You have a way to take money. Like you have a website that has at least a page that is like, here's what you get. Um, project management, deadlines, like all of these things. They're all things that we use for ourselves for the most part anyway, if we're already working as creative professionals. It's
Hmm.
a matter of thinking about how to present this to clients, how to put this together in a system that makes sense. This is what we're going to be doing in the incubator program when I launch that at the end of February. So anybody looking for help is coming. But yeah, that's the short answer I think for this is that you come up with what is the offer that you're going to try, and of course you don't know if it's going to work until you try it. And then if you think, well, this is the price point I need, then you think, well, what goes with that price point? What are the things that I would need in order to pay that price point?
Hmm.
What are other people going to need in order to say, I feel like I've gotten value for my money?
Maybe another way to think of it, I'm just thinking now, is like another way of thinking about the 5-year plan. Like that's sort of an idea that I've used over the years of, when I do my kind of yearly checklist, I look at what I've done in the year and I look at what I want to be doing by next year and then 5 years and, 20 years ahead and so on. But I tend to do it honestly in sense of like, well, by 5 years from now, I'd like to have, two more books finished. I'd like to spend some time abroad. The sort of kind of goals of things I want to have accomplished. But it sounds like you're saying it would be worth envisioning that from like a almost like a lifestyle point of view, like a sort of like I want to, you know, have a house and be able to travel abroad and
Yeah, I want to be
you
able
know
to pay for
I want
travel
to,
abroad.
yeah, I want to have to, I know my comics aren't going to make money, so I want to be able, so reframing it as like, I want to have the freedom to be able to make, experimental comic books and stuff like that. And then work back from there.
Yeah, I think that that's smart. And yes, thinking in, and let's not go 5 years, let's go a year, let's go
Yeah.
2 years and say, where do I want to be in a year financially in terms of security? And it's just a sense of, I think we talked about this last week a little bit, the idea of being well resourced, the idea of feeling like you are taken care of, that there's not this like screaming anxiety all the time about what's going to happen next and next paycheck and, or not even next paycheck, just check like when are you going to get paid and how is it enough? And, all that
Right.
stuff, and just kind of be released from
Yeah.
that. Like, what would that look like for you? And then how can you plan a way to get there? And again, it's not going to be whatever you're doing now that isn't working, it isn't going to magically start working. You have to
Mhm.
do something differently in order
Right.
to get there. But I do want to say one thing, which is you say, oh, my comics aren't going to pay for anything. All of the amazing things you've done throughout your career, all of the things you've learned, the things you've published, the things you've talked about, they may not be directly monetizable in the sense that beyond a certain point, because, you can make a few $1,000s off of this and that.
Sure.
But all of that is what means that your new endeavor can be hugely successful because you bring so much experience and richness to it. So I just want to kind of reframe that a little bit because there's
Sure.
this way in which I think we can get really dismissive about the work that we love doing, but we're like, oh, I'm so frustrated with it because it doesn't make the money I want it to make. It is why you can do something else.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. Yeah, if you're doing creative work and you're sharing it with people, you are building up a relationship with people and a body of work that has real impact on people. And I can totally see, kind of switching your point of view on it and assessing it and being like, oh, this really has value. And maybe the books or the drawings or the music you're putting out is not necessarily going to make tons of money, but it's going to lead to relationships and ideas that could lead to other opportunities.
It's why you can do it's why you can move into this new phase and do what you want to do and have that flexibility and know that you have that solid base and have those relationships that are going to lead to revenue. Yeah, no, the work that you've done is incredibly valuable. When I made my pivot from being basically trying to be a full-time author to being very much a part-time author and coach and teacher, doing autonomous creative focus workshop, that pivot, that moment was it was really challenging for me because I thought, does it mean that nothing I've done through the 25 years of my career matters anymore?
Hmm.
And it took a little while for me to calm down from that and realize, like, I couldn't do what I'm doing now. I couldn't teach the things I'm teaching now. We couldn't have this conversation if I didn't come out of that background, if I didn't have all of that experience to draw on.
Right. I mean, we talked about that about last time too. That like everything you're doing now comes pretty directly out of. We talked about the Out of the Wire podcast you did after the Out of the Wire book, but really back to even the Art Babe website and your like mini comics making guide. That was like the first sign of your impulse to share and teach stuff.
Which
Um,
still gets more hits than
yeah,
almost anything else on my website.
still up there somewhere,
It is up
and
there.
yeah, so totally like the stuff that we do, and especially it's a bonus of getting older and having more experience as you get to look back and say like, oh, I can actually use this in a creative way that might actually bring in some money in a satisfying way. Because I again, we talked about this last time. We have made money off our art, but in ways that have been ultimately frustrating. For the last 20 years, the sort of adjunct teaching model, the freelance slog, and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
again, it's like not about can you make money? Yes, you can, but it's like how are you going to do it in a way that you're happy with and that it's actually sustaining.
Yeah, very much so.
That's something
Um,
that I'm still very much trying to figure out for myself. Luckily, you're way ahead of me, so we're doing all right as a family. So thank you for that.
but it's creative reuse, it's
Yeah,
creative reuse of this deep well of resources that you have available. And I think that creative people are really well positioned if they could just kind of, like unclench from that idea that it has to be this way. They're really well positioned to make use of all of the things that they bring to life
hmm,
to build something new. Basically, in order to make this kind of transition, though, you have to, to get to that sense of security that your needs are more than covered and you're okay, so you can relax and actually make your work. You have to know your numbers. You have to know what these numbers are. What do you need? What does it look like in real life? So I wanted to let everybody know that I created this real talk calculator to help you identify what's not working and start to design a better answer. And the link is in the show notes.
and it's going to make your heart sink when you first go through it. I warn you, but it's going to be good for you.
Bitter medicine. That's what we
There's
do around here.
there's pretty much no way as an artist you can take an honest look at all of your kind of numbers and not come away with like cold sweats. But Jessica has ideas for that. So
I'm here to help. So I have this calculator that I developed, and I have another one with more layers to it, like more pieces to it that I'm going to be giving away in a seminar that I'll tell you about in a little bit. Basically, all of these calculators will make you go, oh my God, what am I going to do? Like, how do I make this work? But there are ways to make it work. That's what we just got finished saying, is like, there are so many tools in your toolbox, and it's a matter of thinking really differently about what does that look like in the world, and starting from what you need, starting from what does it look like to feel safe and have a sustainable way that you're working that makes you happy,
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily look the way you think it's going to look, because all of the stuff that we've been sold throughout our lives about what it looks like to be a professional artist, it's not true, right? Those things don't work the way they seem to work on the outside. And that's
Mostly
what
they
this is
don't.
all about, is understanding that, being in control of it. I love debunking. It's so fun.
And it's bracing but liberating too, that when you sort of look at the breakdown of the numbers, or reading Jessica's blog post about the 1,000 fans and all the various critiques of that. Again, it's sort of a sinking feeling, like, oh, so it doesn't really work, but then it gives you the knowledge to then kind of build something more, actually doable and sustainable.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thought is like, "Oh my God, it doesn't work? What do you mean it doesn't work?" But obviously it doesn't work because you're trying to do it and it doesn't work, right? Like, we already know it doesn't work. So this is just telling you why it doesn't work. And then that gets you on the track to doing something that does work. And that's what we really want.
Yeah,
All right. Well, thanks for being here with me again, Matt. This was really fun.
no
And
problem.
we will do it again sometime. We're going to
Hmm.
bring back guests soon. We're going to bring back other people guests. And then Matt and I will be on again in the future.
Sounds good. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much for joining us today for The Autonomous Creative. Our show is produced by Matt Madden. Our production coordinator is Lucina Poyakhandian, and our production assistant is Rhiannon Sunday. Music is by Matt Madden, and I'm your host, Jessica Abel. You can find all our takeaways, as well as the links and extras we mentioned today, plus transcripts, in the show notes. Find everything you need at acpod.show. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe. And please take a sec to pop over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a rating and review. And we absolutely love to hear your reactions and takeaways on Instagram. Tag us at Autonomous Creative. See you next time.